There are plays that rearrange how an entire city breathes. June 19th, 2016. Game 7 of the NBA Finals. The clock is a thin knife and the score hangs like a question. A pass careens toward the rim, a young all-star waits on the wing, and then, as if gravity itself chooses a side, a man larger than the moment explodes into the frame, climbs past the noise, and, with an arm that reads fate like a book, rips the ball out of the air. The arena exhales, the narrative pivots. That block, one of the single clearest imprints of 21st century basketball, didn't just preserve a tie. It rewrote a city's belief, rewired a career, and defined what LeBron James's will looks like when it finds the most unforgiving of windows. That frame is the shorthand everyone reaches for. The block, the Kyrie step back that follows, and Cleveland's impossible reclaiming of a title that had been a 52-year silence. It is a moment born of muscle, context, and the stubborn arithmetic of years. Before the flash, there is the slow accumulation. LeBron Raymond James was born December 30th, 1984 in Akron, Ohio. A place that matters because the geography of expectation gives a narrative texture to everything he later becomes. The kid on the cover of Sports Illustrated as a high school junior was not an accident. He was the product of a rare public apprenticeship. St. Vincent St. Mary High School crafted a phenomenon. Games against Oak Hill, national attention, the nickname The Chosen One, all of it compressed into a teenage biography that scouts could not ignore. The Cavaliers drafting him first overall in the 2003 NBA draft was a civic event. An 18-year-old pulled into the professional orbit of a franchise desperate for meaning. The draft pick was the beginning of a pressure that never really stopped. And also, the first test of how a body and mind respond when the world's expectations are pinned to a single pair of sneakers. The early Cavs seasons were a study in emergent responsibility. LeBron's rookie year was not merely productive, it announced an unusual synthesis of power, vision, and basketball intelligence. The league watched a teenager who could finish through contact like a veteran and pass with a maturity few stars display so young. Those first years accrued plaudits, Rookie of the Year, All-Star nods, but more importantly, they shaped public conversation. How do you measure a player who is both a statistical machine and a cultural lightning rod? The Cavs built around him with fits and gaps, and the first era of LeBron is best remembered as immense potential wrestling with organizational instability. The standard modern arc, youth, peak, legacy, begins here in the sleepless nights of a small market franchise that suddenly felt enormous because of one man's talent. Then came the pivot that was also a scandal for many fans, the 2010 televised special called The Decision. It was, for better or worse, a cultural Rorschach test. LeBron announced he was leaving Cleveland to join the Miami Heat, pairing with Dwyane Wade and Chris Bosh to form a new Big Three. The move was tactical and existential. It redefined player mobility in the modern NBA and forced fans to confront a new reality where stars manage their own windows. Public reaction was volcanic, boos in Cleveland, think pieces about loyalty and agency, 1,000 editorialized moralities, but the on-court consequences were immediate. In Miami, LeBron's game evolved again. Previously a primary scoring force locked to isolation and transition, he became a more willing passer, an interior rim caller, a pick-and-roll orchestrator who learned to balance scoring with facilitation in pursuit of championships. The Heat years would produce back-to-back titles in 2012 and 2013, along with Finals MVPs that confirmed his capacity to carry and to peak within a constructed team identity. Those titles rewired the argument about whether players could form dynasties by design rather than by organic roster construction. The Miami run was not a perfect arc. The 2011 Finals loss to the Dallas Mavericks, a series where criticism landed on LeBron for fitting complexity into a direct scoreboard expectation, was a stark reminder that being the best player does not guarantee victory. In 2011, he learned the harsh truth that playoffs calcify into matchups and that chemistry can help or hurt. The Heat responded with adjustments that led to dominance in 2012 to 2013, but the Mavericks series is tethered to LeBron's public story because it marked a moment of vulnerability in a career otherwise defined by authority. It also taught him refinement, how to manage moment, control aggression, and channel intensity into playoff durability. The arc between 2011's failure and 2012 to 2013's triumphs is essential for understanding why LeBron's legacy never reads in only one register. He is a player who has been humbled and then reconstituted in the public eye. Returning to Cleveland in 2014 was another pivot of equal dramatic weight. This time, the narrative was framed as homecoming, LeBron coming back to deliver a championship to a city that had been starved of sports glory. But returns are complicated. They are negotiated with identity and expectation. They are not merely about family dinners and draft picks. The Cavaliers constructed a team around him: Kyrie Irving's volatile shot-making, Kevin Love's rebounding and floor spacing, and LeBron shaped his game into a near-complete engine: distributive power, rim dominance, rebounding, defense. The 2016 finals crystallized all of that work into an epical achievement. Facing a Warriors team that had set a new regular season standard with 73 wins, LeBron's Cavs came back from a 3-1 deficit. An outcome that had never happened in finals history, and did so by producing an array of superlative performances in elimination games. The block that preserved the tie, Kyrie's step-back three that answered Curry's championship-class scoring, and LeBron's near triple-double averages across the deciding stretch combined to produce an archetypal chapter: the hometown hero who actually remakes history. That title was not just LeBron's, it was the collective result of a team shaped around his choices and the coaches who trusted a margin where usual strategies would have failed. LeBron's movement between teams is a lens on modern franchise thinking. He has shown an unusual ability to reconfigure his own style to match teammates and coaches. From raw, dominant scorer in early Cleveland, to facilitator and two-way operator in Miami, to the comprehensive engine in Cleveland with Tyronn Lue's playoffs coaxing, to the veteran leader in Los Angeles. Signing with the Lakers in 2018 opened another chapter, one defined by brand, legacy, and the imperative to compete in Los Angeles public theater. The 2020 championship in the Orlando bubble was freighted with modern meaning. Won during a pandemic, it united a roster around a social justice platform and gave LeBron the distinction of winning titles with 3 different franchises. The trophy in 2020 reads as much like an answer to history as it does a personal achievement. He had built a case that transcended geography and refuted the idea that his earlier moves were merely opportunistic. Numbers are the language that refuses to lie. LeBron's MVP collection, 4 regular season MVPs, 2009, 2010, 2012, 2013, and his finals MVPs, 2012, 2013, 2016, 2020, are the arithmetic that marks an elite career, but raw totals tell only part of the story. Longevity, adaptability, and consistent elite minutes across decades are rare occurrences. In February 2023, he passed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to become the NBA's all-time leading scorer, a colossal contested crown that confirmed both durability and scoring genius. By March 2024, he etched another milestone, becoming the first player to reach 40,000 career points, an emblem of unprecedented longevity and production. These milestones are statistical monuments, but they are also evidence of an athlete who has resisted decay through training, diet, and a willingness to evolve his game to remain efficient and central. Records shift the debate from "is he great?" to "how does greatness last across eras?" And LeBron's numbers force that question to be re-asked. The aesthetic of LeBron's game is instructive. He merges brute physicality with an almost courtly spatial intelligence. Where Jordan was an assassin of the mid-range and Kobe a sculptor of will, LeBron is both freight train and conductor. He uses mass to tilt defenders, but he also perceives passing lanes and seams that few players can see. He adapts positionally, at times a ball-dominant point forward, at times a post-anchored finisher, and in later years a floor-spacing pick-and-roll orchestrator. That positional fluidity forced coaches league-wide to rethink defensive schematics, switch everything or live with mismatches. Opponents attempt counters, double teams, traps, and physical hedges. And the most fascinating part of LeBron's evolution is his way of turning counters into opportunities for teammates. He makes others better in a literal, measurable sense. His presence increases teammate efficiency more often than most stars can claim. That is the modern essence of his value and why franchises covet players who produce both points and positive multiplication effects. Comparisons are inevitable and illuminating. The Jordan debate is not merely statistical, it's philosophical. Jordan offered unassailable peak dominance and a mythic finals record. LeBron offers sustained excellence, adaptability, and a multifaceted game that outpaces most in raw cumulative production. Kobe, Curry, Durant each offers touchstones. Kobe's clutch obsession and footwork, Curry's range-democratizing shooting revolution, Durant's pure scoring elegance. LeBron sits at an intersection of these, a scoring force like Durant, a facilitating spine like Curry, and a durability and physicality that echoes the greats of an earlier era. These comparisons are not merely for finish-line debates, they are tools to analyze how different versions of greatness age, how team construction responds, and how narratives crystallize in a media-saturated culture. LeBron's uniqueness is that he keeps forcing the comparison because he refuses to fit neatly into one archetype. There are darker and more contested passages. Public backlash to the decision, playoff failures, and occasional questions about late career load management have been chapters of critique. But so too are the social investments and activism that make LeBron more than an athlete. His I Promise, school for at-risk children in Akron, his visible support of social justice movements, and his media ventures reflect a modern star who wields influence beyond the court. This duality, athlete and activist, entertainer and investor, feared competitor and civic actor, enlarges the arc of his career into a cultural biography. You cannot evaluate LeBron purely through efficiency metrics because his presence reconfigures institutions, franchises, youth programs, broadcast economics, and the media narratives that attach to superstar players. The tactical critics will eventually return to measurements, playoff efficiency, shooting splits in elimination games, and the way teams game plan to neutralize him. It's a fine-grained debate. Can he carry a team without the supporting structure that players like Jordan required? The 2011 Mavericks finals and certain playoff exits provide grist for skeptics. But the 2016 comeback, the 2 Heat titles, and the Lakers' 2020 bubble triumph are counterweights that answer with evidence of LeBron's capacity to alter outcomes at the largest stakes. The modern evaluator must weigh both sequences: vulnerability and vindication, failure and reinvention. Great careers are rarely linear, they are layered. LeBron's is a palimpsest of recalibration and achievement. His relationships with teammates and coaches map a political economy of basketball. Miami's Eric Spoelstra learned to harness LeBron's power inside a 3-headed monster. David Blatt and Tyronn Lue navigated Cavaliers-era complexities with varying success. Frank Vogel's Lakers era required different management strategies for minutes and defensive schemes, and his association with Anthony Davis reshaped a Lakers roster into a championship contender when health aligned. Each coach's willingness to build around LeBron's strengths or to force him into a system that muffles them has produced different outcomes. The player-coach dynamic is crucial in modern franchise thinking. LeBron's presence changes what coaches can and cannot do, and savvy coaches either build around him or craft countermeasures. When the fit is right, the results are catalytic. When it is not, the narrative reads as friction. The cultural magnetism is also a commercial and social phenomenon. LeBron's migration to Los Angeles expanded his brand into Hollywood economies. His production company, endorsements, and media investments reflect how modern athletes monetize platform at scale. The ripple effect changes free agency markets. Teammates, agents, and rivals all react to a superstar's geographic and economic gravity. The NBA itself benefits. Higher ratings, new sponsorships, and the institutional recalibration that joints between star movement and league narratives. LeBron's career thus becomes a case study in sports as an engine for business, and a reminder that modern greatness is judged in locker rooms and boardrooms alike. Look at the small moments if you want to understand the man. The last-second pass in a tight game where nothing seems open until LeBron finds the seam. The half-court heaves that become assists because defenders bite. The defensive reposition that turns a would-be rebound into transition. Those micro-decisions, repeated 1,000 times, are how longevity compounds into cumulative greatness. They are the invisible repetitions that produce the visible monuments in the record books. When historians parse eras, those small, repeated choices will matter as much as the trophy count. LeBron's game is a study in the everyday execution of excellence. Habit turned institutional, intensity turned routine. So what is the honest verdict? LeBron James is a player who forces constants to be rethought. He stretches the definition of what a superstar can be: a scorer, a passer, a leader, and, perhaps most importantly, a persistent presence across eras. He is the answer to the question of how excellence ages in the modern game, not by clinging to youthful style, but by adding new languages to his repertoire. He will be judged across multiple axes: championships, cumulative statistics, cultural influence, and era-relative dominance. And on every axis, he provides compelling evidence. Sometimes the debates will rage, sometimes they will calm into consensus. What is indisputable is the shape of his imprint, a career that altered franchises, shifted markets, changed how young players train, and rewired the public's imagination of athletic possibility. Return to the single frame that began this piece. Game 7, the rip, the silence, the switch from despair to possibility. It is the best shorthand because it contains a dozen threads at once: physicality, timing, sacrifice, and narrative redemption. But the frame only lands as art because it sits atop thousands of similar, smaller frames: practices, film sessions, mentorship talks, charity work, losses, and late-night flights. That cumulative life, the long, exacting, often messy career, is what makes LeBron more than a highlight or a headline. He is, in the modern sense, a living institution whose story is still being written. Watch the next decade not for whether his legend is already complete, but for how the subsequent chapters will reframe what we already think we know. If this story stayed with you, not just the highlights but the ideas behind them, this channel is built for that kind of basketball thinking. I'm growing it slowly alongside a full-time job. Subscribing is the simplest way to make sure these stories keep getting told.